Welcome back everyone. Today we're going to put this E50 back together. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. In the last video we took everything apart and cleaned it. Now we're going to put it all back together with a new treat stuffy crank, new seals, and new bearings. I'm going to install the bearings on the main gear first. The easiest way to do this is with a press. You can also do it with heat. I use a little bit of assembly lube. There we go. Hey guys, this is the treat stuffy crank that I'm going to install. As you can see, I've already installed the bearings, the seals. I thought I hit the record button and I didn't. So don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging. I took off the old bearings from the old crank and I'm going to put them back on to show you how to do it. I'm going to start on the clutch side. I'll show you the way that I do it, and then on the ignition side I'll show you the way that most people do it. First thing we want to do on the clutch side is install the seal. The open face faces the bearing, so backwards. The closed face faces the crank. So oil this up and slide it on. Okay. Next is a bearing with a snap ring. This snap ring faces out because it is off center. Slide that down just a little. And now this is where I do it differently than most people. I use a Tusk crank puller pusher. And so I made this little pushing device that I slide over that sits right on the race. This tool is really great. So you install this puller nut, and then you install the clutch nut. Now you install this piece. Tighten this, and it drives the bearing perfectly on. This side is done. Alright, now we're going to do the ignition side. For this side, I'm going to use a toaster oven to heat up the bearing, and it'll slide right on. The bearing has been in there for about 15 minutes at 350 degrees. The main reason I use a Tusk tool is because I bought it for a different project, and I like that I don't have to wait for the bearing to heat up. Now to assemble the clutch side, first thing I do is put a little assembly lube on it. First, we put a big circlip, then we do the shim, clutch bell bushing, clutch bell, then the top shim, and finally the top circlip. Now you can put in the clutch. I'm not going to put on the starter plate because I want to tighten this later. We're ready to put the internals into the cases and seal them up. A couple things we have to do still is install a seal on the main gear. Make sure to lube the inside of the seal. The main gear does need a snap ring, so install that, and then install the seal. Install the main gear with this ring gap pointing up. Now we have to install the ignition side seal. Oil the shaft a little, and make sure to oil the seal. Again, I do this way. Make sure that gap is pointed up. This bearing gets oiled through a passage, and that passage is right here. It goes in between the bearing and the seal, so there has to be a gap, and that gap needs to be 1 millimeter. I use Ultra Black RTV. It's gas and oil resistant. I only do one side. After I apply the RTV, I smear it with my finger and make a very light coat. This is actually the top case, so you want these rings pointing down. So when it's installed, they'll be pointing up. Same with the main gear, you want that pointing up. Now we can install these case halves. 4 long, and the other long one goes right here, and the rest are short. Tighten these finger tight in a star pattern one in the front, one in the back, one in the front, one in the back, so on. Okay, all the bolts are snug. Now is a great time to wipe off any excess RTV that squeezes out. The engine's done for now. I'm gonna wait until tomorrow until I can snug it up, and then I'll finish assembly. It's the next morning. This thing sat overnight for about 12 hours. Now we need to tighten these the rest of the way and put this engine back together. There's one bolt that's deep in there, it's kind of hard to get, so make sure you have a long flathead screwdriver. First thing I'm going to do is cut a new base gasket and clutch cover gasket. Use a hole punch to punch out the stud holes. I like to install the base gasket oiled. I feel like it absorbs some of the oil and gets a little bit thicker, and then when you tighten it, it'll squeeze down and get a better seal. Lube up the needle bearing. Always use a new circlip. Lube up the piston so it slides into the cylinder easy. Squeeze the piston ring together at the pin. I'm installing lock washers with the pliers. I first install the nuts. I get them started with a magnet. We want to torque the head nuts to 84 inch-pounds. I bring them all up slowly to about 60 and then to 80. I'm going to do the ignition now. Take all the wires and slide them through. Install the stator screws. Some E50s have 3 and some only have 2. This one has 3. Don't forget about this little grommet. Slide this in. Insert the wood drift key. And then the flywheel. Use a piston stop to find timing. Find top dead center and then rotate your flywheel before top dead center 1.2 millimeters. And that's where you want the points to open. My points are opening at about 0.8 millimeters. I need to advance it a little bit. Now they're opening at about 1.2 millimeters. Tighten the stator. And you can install the flywheel cover. Now we can put the engine back on the bike. To install the engine, it's just 3 bolts. Now we have to connect all these wires back in. I don't remember which way they go, but luckily we took a picture, so we just have to match them. The top one is blue and black stripe, and then it's the coil blue and the blue from the ignition. We can reconnect the starter cable. You should not be able to open this thing all the way. I completely forgot the starter plate. Yep. Now we can put this back on. Now we can put the clutch cable back in. Now to install the kickstand. Now install the ATF. Fill it up until it weeps. Now install the carburetor. Now we have to install the sprocket on the main gear. Install one circlip, then the sprocket, and then the other circlip. Last part is the exhaust. Alright, it's all back on the bike. Let's test it out. Gas is on. Thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe, and let me know any questions or comments you might have.